Let's call the meeting to order at 5:15. And we don't have a quorum yet, but we will in 5 minutes, so we won't take any actions until then. So we have a couple other agenda items that I think, well, really just the minutes, but we'll push that until we're done talking to you guys so that we respect everyone's time. But the main thing we want to talk about today is the sustainability coordinator position / proposal that the Energy Committee Working Group, including lots of members of the public, some of them here right now, have been working on for the last 2 months. We talked about it a little bit at your last Planning Commission meeting when I came and visited with you guys. And we're hoping to just talk through what's left. Since then, the town has written up a job description that they like, that Sue has been a part of.
I would say it's a job outline.
Job outline.
Not the formal, not the final.
Like the thing that might go out to, yeah. And it looks pretty good to us, but so we just wanted to talk it through with you guys because the way it's currently structured is that it would be a full-time planning department employee under Sue. They'd probably end up interacting at least as much with the Planning Commission as they would with us because it's going to be a planning department position. And so yeah, we just wanted to talk through some stuff and see how the Planning Commission feels about the ideas, what the town's put together, what the working group's put together. So I have some nice handouts.
Let's hope we can do it.
Yeah.
And how does this work, the timing of that?
Let's see, I have 4 copies.
I have the vision for
Yeah, so
success.
there is-
Okay.
Because I have access to your Google
Okay,
Drive.
this is all in
Where
there.
is the job description?
Oh, do we have
The
a-
policies and goals,
do we have
okay,
a
let me see
Google
if I can
Drive?
find that.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't get this up on our Google Drive.
Okay.
I apologize. I thought that I had, but it's.
No, that's all.
it's
Good.
all-
I can do that because I have access to
You
those
wanna,
drives.
you wanna upload it?
Yeah. Can I do that right now?
You should, actually, so the
That might be
link,
beyond my skill set.
that whole drive should be public to anyone who has the link. So if you just send them the link to that
okay.
folder.
Great.
Here, I'll give you these anyway while I'm here.
Nice.
And these are sort of a draft-ish version of, okay.
I'm gonna just.
I have
reply
made
all
some,
to
this
the-
is still a draft, I've made some tentative unilateral edits in the last 24 hours for people who've seen these before. Just trying to condense, but the gist is that this is going to go before the select board at their next meeting on July 9th. It will include that job outline from town staff and this as sort of a 3-part packet from the working group. And what we have is sort of a general argument for the position and a list. We're just trying to give context for the sorts of things this position might do, what they might work on, how it's different from the planning department we already have, what kind of value it might bring to the town. So, now I've given away all my copies. I'm going to get out my computer.
Oscar, you can use this.
Yeah,
I don't have it.
we'll
Here, you wanna
share.
Sure.
I'm on policies and goals. And this one is the visions for success.
I'm on job description. Are we not talking about the jobs, just the job description draft?
We can talk about the job description draft too. I don't have copies of that, but it should be in the drive.
Yeah, I see it. Okay.
And the way I think we all have been picturing the position is that a lot of what they'll do for the first year is use their expert knowledge to sort of do a lot of the work that we've done already. Like they will reach out to the community, they will do their own research, they'll bring their own experience. We're not suggesting, nobody's suggesting that the things on the policy and goals list that this sustainability coordinator will even work on all of these things. Some of these things are by definition so big that one person or one town can't really affect them at all. Like Brattleboro cannot institute a carbon tax. So that maybe a state could do that. But even then we'd have, issues with being right on the border, things like that. But these are priorities and goals, and a lot of the work towards them might take the form of reaching out to groups that are already doing this stuff, making sure that our priorities have some presence at the state level, making sure that town staff has an expert on staff about sustainability who's providing that perspective on everything. So if there's some planning decision to be made, or not a public works decision to be made, a new vehicle, something like that, someone on staff who's advocating for, sure, it's all a cost and a benefit. Not every vehicle has, for example, a good electric version, right? Like, I don't think there's any electric dump trucks that are economical right now. But just making sure that the sustainability perspective is part of every decision. So I think those two things, reaching out and bringing together resources for the town and being sort of subject matter expert for the town staff, will be a lot of the day-to-day work, if that makes sense.
Oscar, may I add also?
Sure.
Liaising with local nonprofits and existing organizations, 350 BCS, whoever that may be, kind of keeping an ear to the ground, seeing what they're involved in and helping them, those nonprofits or energy-minded organizations, communicate with the select board.
Right. Hey. Nice chair. All right, you have the floor now. So, and what we're hoping to come out of this meeting with is to talk it through and get to a point where the Planning Commission thinks it's a good idea and would like to, sort of add their support or recommendation to it for 7-9, the next select board meeting, and we will do the same. So yeah, I know there were we had some things to talk about, some concerns, stuff like that from last time. Any of those?
I missed the last meeting.
Yeah,
So,
I don't remember
yeah.
too many concerns. I felt like we were.
I'm curious, what does it look like when you say an expert in those areas? Like, have we done any research on like what it's like to hire an expert?
We're not expecting an expert in every field, every field on this list.
Yeah.
We never get that. I don't even know if there is one person anywhere who could be that.
Maybe Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And his kids.
Good point. Expert in every field.
But we're looking for someone who's, we won't be doing the hiring. The town will be doing that in the hiring committee, but the things I would think we would look for would be sort of literacy in the discipline of sustainability. And you can, I wish I'd printed it out, but in that job description, it actually, or the outline, it actually lays out pretty well the things that we'd be looking for. And a lot of it is interpersonal skills, ability to work with different organizations, to have some body of knowledge, but this isn't someone who's going to come in and say, oh, here's how you solve the housing problem. You just do this, that's the answer, right? Like, it's not going to be something like that, but it's going to be someone who has the skill set to be a liaison between organizations and to put in the time to help move these projects forward, stuff like that.
So I guess one question is, Sue, how's this interfacing with the actual job description development? And I'm still, it's like there was
Are you wondering about the position that's open now?
well, that too, but more like there was a request by town meeting. The select board needs to respond to that request, and in the meantime, there is a hiring process that the town normally goes through. So ideally, we would want this request and the information coming from this request and the job description to find, some synergy. So in terms of this going in front of the select board, what is the timing of the job description? Will the job description be ready at the same time for that meeting, or does that need to take longer? Is the select board gonna approve the job description, or are they approving the idea of it, and then?
So I think, and town manager
Peter, you're
is
here,
with
that's
us.
great, I didn't see you, sorry,
Late.
I would've just asked you.
Peter can correct me if I'm wrong. The job outline that we have, as well as the policy, the policy list and kind of success measures that the working group put together will be sent to the select board. I think they're approving a position,
That's correct.
not the position or the details that
Because
are
it's not in their jurisdiction to do so, really,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
sorry. So, what Sue said is exactly right. We wrote it as a position outline rather than as a job description because we thought that it would be misleading and cause confusion for folks to think that the select board should be approving all the job descriptions, because that's something that we in the administrative staff ought to do. So instead, we did it much in the same format as what will become a job description if the position gets approved, but explicitly leaving out, for instance, salary, which would be identified in the job description, but we didn't identify it here, in part because depending on how this conversation goes with the select board, it may lead to adjustments that make this even more robust, or it may lead to adjustments that kind of pare it back down a little bit. Depending on how that goes, that may affect the appropriateness of a higher or lower salary. So we'll get to attaching a salary to it when we get ready to go out and actually advertise the position, assuming the select board approves it. Right now, what we thought and what we've been working on in parallel over the last couple of months is the folks who have organized themselves within the community to define why this is such an important issue to the community, as expressed through town meeting and in other settings, should feel the freedom to work together and put down on paper their statement of why this is important and why the select board ought to do it. And we didn't want to be overly controlling over any aspect of that, the format or the content. And then Sue and I worked together, and now, thank goodness, the town has a human resources director, which we've been working towards for a couple of years, and she's on board. She started 2 weeks ago, and so Sally also reviewed this with us, and we're feeling good about sort of the structure of, if the select board does approve this position, this is what we think the person ought to be doing. This is how they can fit into our team and be effective. That's why both pieces will go to the board for the board's consideration next Tuesday night.
So this job description report is going to be like pared down a lot then? Like it's going to be a little bit
Which
more.
one are you looking
Yeah,
at?
that you're looking for.
That's their research.
Yeah.
It's sustainability coordinator.
Do you all have in front of you the document that Sue and I produced?
No.
We should make copies of that. I have it with me.
That'd be
Yeah,
great.
I have it,
It's in digital
It's in
format. if
the,
that
I
helps
sent
people.
you all that link
There you
to
go.
Okay,
the,
there.
That's the one.
and
Oh yeah, that's much better.
Do you want to borrow mine?
it's,
Because I can pull it up.
it's a good deal more general than
Mhm.
your list
Definitely.
of policies and goals and visions for success. Are you all happy with that?
Yeah, so this is our, I also don't need to be the only one talking about this, but this is our attempt to sort of coalesce an idea of why, like what the community wants, why they wanted the position, why town meeting voted for it, the kinds of things it could do for Brattleboro. I don't expect at all that a person we hire will take the documents we made and just use that as the blueprint for their job. I think they'll come in with something much more general like this, general principles, and then do their own research, come up with their own goals, come up with their own plans and ways to measure. So we talked about this on the 27th at a meeting, and as far as I know, everyone is on board with the more general job description. We definitely didn't want to write something that was like, we want to hire someone who will definitely come in and add public transit and expand bike access, or stuff at that level of detail. So as far as I know, I think we're all on board with it. We saw it last week.
I believe when it comes to particulars, this individual, or once it gets to being more specific for the job description, they're going to be able to find a template for, given similar communities, population, socioeconomic standing, and look at what this position does in other towns to kind of draw up a framework for what they'd like to be doing. The fact that this position is active in comparable towns around the country speaks to the fact that it's a necessary and valuable priority, I'd say. So this is going on. I mean, I think a lot of people feel like Brattleboro needs to be aligned with that. There's work to be done. I know it may seem that perhaps there's overlapping duties, but I think this position is whoever attains it is going to find that Brattleboro has its unique aspects, but to a large extent you're going to be able to pick and choose duties from a number that are already being accomplished elsewhere.
I guess the thing that I find sort of interesting is that sustainability is a kind of a general concept, and I know it means, it's kind of like community.
Sure.
It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So the only suggestion of this being about climate change is really the notion of that anybody who would be reading it would define sustainability in relationship to climate change. If they didn't, it could just be about making Brattleboro a strong and economically vibrant town,
Right.
and cutting down all the trees and sending them off to whoever wants to buy them at the big top dollar. Right?
Could.
I mean, I'm going all the way to one
Yeah.
side to make the point that there's some very specific things in your vision for success, like the energy progressive town and renewable energy goals and all these other sorts of things that in the actual position description. And I'm not criticizing the position description, I'm just sort of talking about the notion of if we were to agree with this, what exactly would we be agreeing to?
Peter looks like he wants to say.
We purposely defined sustainability as something greater than just dealing with climate change, because I guess frankly, we think that it's so obvious that if we're going to invest as a community in paying a person to do this work, that's going to be a major focus of their work.
Okay.
The physical, environmental sustainability of the community, doing our part as part of trying to have a more sustainable planet. But we also think it's important because there are other measures. We learned quite a lot. The community group did, and we have from looking around at others who have the job. This position does exist in a lot of places. It also exists differently in different places, quite differently. Some, in terms of the scale of what's assigned to it and the authority that it carries. And so, what we came away with from all of that is this is not intended to be an energy coordinator, beefed up into sustainability, strictly speaking about climate change. But it has to have a major component of that, and we want it to have more. We want there to be some work that this person does that has a broader vision of sustainability in that community sense. So that's where the housing measures come in and the economic measures come in. And by economic, we don't just mean business. We mean, prevailing wages, and we mean what rents are going for. There's different ways to get at, how healthy are we, and how sustainable from that perspective of, 5 years and 10 years can we envision that the current state of affairs is still can be the state of affairs 10 years from now, and will be a healthy, successful community. There are systems out there that actually are in place as benchmarking, so that different communities can use a common system for how to measure against these different characteristics. And we intend to set up something like that that's going to be sufficient to cover a variety of different measures of sustainability in Brattleboro.
Oh, cool.
And we did, yeah.
Two things come to mind. One is I'm also hoping that the vision for success and the policies and goals would be kind of part of like a package that would go to that would be part of whether it's like a recruitment package or a hiring package, but that these would be documents that that person or those people would also see. So it's not just like going to the select board and then like falling into a void. But also I think for me, part of the purpose of being part of this working group and the work that I do in general, I work with 350 Vermont and a lot of work with climate activism, is to try to get us out of our silos and like really talk about how all of these issues are interconnected. And while climate is like a top priority for me, it's connected to all these other issues like economic justice and racial justice and social justice, and so my vision for this sustainability coordinator is to try to really connect a lot of those dots, so it's not just like I'm over here talking about climate and other people are over here talking about other things, but just that like this is connected to every part of the work that we do in this town, and ideally that person is able to better communicate that and then like put some kind of vision into practice. That'd be my hope.
Yes.
Just to add a quick example of that, that's right on. And so public transportation is something that certainly is connected to climate change. If more of us use it, then there's fewer cars, and presumably, we're doing better by the planet. But in terms of community health and in terms of economic justice, and in terms actually of employment, people being able to get to jobs, that if they don't have transportation, they may not otherwise be able to accept that employment, but they might be qualified to do it. So matching up employers and employees will be increasingly a challenge in this area where we've got jobs that go unfilled because there are either transportation issues or other issues about the readiness of people to take those jobs. So that's just one example, and that's why we have these different categories that we want to be looking at, because there's so much intersectionality between climate change and other sustainability factors that any one particular action might affect.
I have a question, and I apologize, I wasn't in the last meeting, so this may have been covered, but what is the process by which priorities would be set for this person in this position? Because there are so many different things they could be doing, or is that not determined or to be determined?
I'm sorry, I missed.
Priorities for the
What is the process by which the priorities would be set for this person and the
Right.
oversight and things that go into that?
So we'll take guidance from the approval process. We're, for the purposes of this conversation, assuming that the select board approves the position, and we go recruit for it and hire somebody into it. And then on an ongoing basis, Sue would supervise the position. They'd be an employee within the planning department. And their priorities would be established in the way that we do for other members of the town team. So, within sort of the broader mission of the department, there's going to be the focus of what this position is intended to accomplish. Sue's going to provide the daily and weekly guidance to that. I'm going to provide some longer-term guidance to it. One unique thing about this position, actually not completely unique, but unusual thing about this position is I'll interact with this person more than I do with most employees that are in a department reporting to a department head. We have 3 other situations in the town, this would be the 4th if it happens, where there's an employee who's supervised by a department head, but is also a member of the town's management team. We intend to do that as a balancing. There were people who wanted this position to be its own department head, but there's certainly not resources to create a staff that would assist this person. And we thought that was both probably more authority than was appropriate, but also too isolating. That to not have this person embedded in a team of people that are doing similar work, which we envision the value that this position can add as being the same kind of value that good planning provides. It's just a variation on that. And so, again, in sustainability officers elsewhere, we've seen them stand alone, we've seen them in utility functions, we've seen them in planning functions. We think that the best way forward for Brattleboro is to have it be within the planning department. But by having this person participate as a member of the management team, it's going to give an opportunity for them to influence actions that are being taken across the wide variety of actions that the town takes in the different departments.
So they would be advocating for influence within actions that the town would be taking anyway, but then those advocating for influence would result in changes with it, so would then go through the process for whatever that was they were advocating on. In other words, so they'd be
I'm sorry.
So they'd be integrating within processes on initiatives the town's already taking.
Yes, and in some cases that might take the form of advocacy. In other cases, it might simply take the form of providing important information that might not otherwise have been brought forward because of the breadth of perspective this person's going to have with these different measuring tools we intend them to use.
But I also think too that there's probably room for them to pick up some of their own initiatives
Sure.
as well. So I don't think it's just in with what we have. So, you know, I kind of look at the town plan. I know it's just a 5-year plan, or 8 years at this point, but I think there's a lot in there, and there's a lot that's probably not being undertaken. So with more staff capacity, that's an area that we'd probably look towards for them to do work on too.
I have a question just to follow up what you just said, Sue. Has the Planning Commission in Brattleboro, or the Planning Services Department, taken on the Enhanced Energy Plan rewrite under Act 174? Has that happened here?
No,
Okay.
it has not.
I'm just curious, and I'm not approving or disapproving of that. What I found often is that very, very small towns suddenly find that they have to do that in a hurry because there's pressure from solar developers and because the Regional Commission is basically working with them to implement it as a pilot. But, you know, to me, among all the different things that have been discussed, that's a classic example of something that this person could take on, you know, as a list of undone, unfinished
I would
business.
agree. I mean, we have stayed away from it to date because we didn't really feel that there were barriers to renewable energy in Brattleboro. It's been pretty well supported, and when you look at the process of it, it's a pretty top-down heavy planning process that we just didn't feel the need to move on because we didn't see the obstacles. But I think it would be great for a sustainability coordinator to evaluate that.
I'm not certain that I got an answer to your question. Are you, this question of how do priorities get set in this enormous list of things?
Right. Yeah.
I'm looking at the policies and goals, that there's each one of the bullet points, and then there are bullet points under the bullet points, could be a whole job. So how looking at this, are we assuming correctly that the policies and goals and the vision for success will go as a packet to said candidates?
Yes, likely.
Okay.
But some of this has to be less than explicit at this point because we're going forward with the basis for the select board to have a conversation about whether or not to fund the position, right? The select board has a policy decision they need to make of that with this $100,000 that town meeting has provided for sustainability and environmental, what was the other?
Energy and
Energy efficiency.
Energy efficiency, thank you. For sustainability and energy efficiency, $100,000, it was clearly stated by advocates for this funding during the town meeting discussion that this should create a position, but it was also completely well understood. It was explicitly understood when the vote was taken that there's no opportunity to direct the board, that the board would need to give consideration to whether a position was created or whether the money was invested in programs or, you know, the spreading of important information or what that might look like. You know, the granting of money to people who are doing projects. So the select board needs to make a policy decision around that. This is the sort of critical step in deciding whether it's going to be a position or not. And I think that one of the things that's really helpful about the work that the community members have done on this is the wide variety of benefits that they see. You know, it could be in areas that go far beyond what one person could be reasonably expected to do. So it gives the select board the opportunity, if they're inclined to create a position, to also give some guidance of, you know, within those many different things that this person could do that would add value for the community. We think these are particularly important, something like that. And that's the way we do our goal setting, and it's not always pretty. It's not always explicit, but if we get the people of the community expressing a desire and the board establishing some goals, and then I'm working with the management team to kind of refine that better. What can we do with the resources that we have? Ultimately, the rubber meets the road out in the departments. That will happen with this position. It's hard for us tonight to be more explicit about exactly how, because a lot depends on the guidance we receive from the board.
Yeah, thank you for following up. The nature of my question wasn't to determine what the priorities are, but determine if there is a framework or a process
Yes.
for establishing those. So if you have a position, granted, you're going to want to, ideally on day one, but everyone has ramp-up time, have that person starting and have a clear framework for establishing what it is they are going to be prioritized,
Yes.
working on. And that could entail, including, since this is a publicly advocated thing, including how do we make sure we are doing the things that the public is asking us to do by nature of them asking for the town taking this kind of initiative. So I want to make sure that we're having a process for that, because you want to get, through the first year of having this position there and be able to go back and say, look, we heard you, we put this position in place, it covered these things that were prioritized, here was the process for how they were prioritized, it may have included some aspect of public comment, and then be able to show that now we can measure the success of that based on how those priorities were established and worked through. So that was the nature of my question, is there a process for that, or is that to be determined as we go? And I'm curious about that, and I think it would be good for the public to know about that.
Sure. And Sue's point in response to your earlier question along that same path was really important. So the initiative that this person shows, so how much ability that the individual has to steer it one way or another is going to very much depend on the capabilities they bring, right? Who are we going to hire? We might be really fortunate to hire somebody who's got some really excellent experience doing this stuff, and what we want to do is not be overly specific about how and what they ought to be doing, but have them tell us how they can be adding a lot of value to what we do. But we may end up not attracting that quality and deciding that there's somebody who's really less experienced but really bright, and we think they can still be very effective, but they're going to need more supervision from Sue and more direction.
Related to that, this thing of, okay, the public asks for this and getting guidance from the public. There's a lot in that, not quite yet a job description, that talks about the ability to work with people, to communicate with people, being a good listener. And that kind of goes along with continuing to, this person needs to continue to interact with the public as well as with the planning commission, the planning department, all the various groups that make up the town government. And you'll notice the word equity snuck in here and there in these documents, and Abby referred to economic, racial equity, etc. That town meeting, when they ask for something, supposedly represents the entire town, and does, but it's a very specific subset of the town. We were also a pretty specific subset of the town, but we went out and spoke to people and brought their opinions into our discussion, which helped us with, that was actually a big help in the goals paper. Oscar's research meant that we started out with way longer list of goals and objectives and duties that sustainability coordinators have. I think in our discussions, and I think that this was somewhat when you came and talked to us too, the idea that this person should be able to go out and meet townspeople as well and bring that information in, as well as be able to hit the ground running, which is going to be hard dealing with a whole lot of already ongoing initiatives, right? And be able to add value to those. One of the things that's kind of cool is that we do have some local sustainability master's programs, and they tend to be interdisciplinary, which means that if we get those local applicants who, once they spend a couple of years in the area, they like to stay around, some of them, they're likely to bring a breadth of knowledge, which will be useful.
I would add real quick, the only restriction on this position is, the limits of that individual's imagination. I mean, we've discussed a number of, not conventional ways that this person could operate, such as working with the Department of Labor or Voc Rehab to prioritize sustainable employment opportunities. They could work with Turning Point to educate and teach agriculture programs to people in recovery. I mean, it goes on and on. As Abby mentioned, all these issues that Brattleboro faces are interconnected. Potentially, this person could come in and literally work in sort of every area that the town is struggling and make climate change, which seems to Brattleboro, it seems like we're saying is the biggest issue, make that a part of the other things that we're working on, economics, criminal justice reform, opioid epidemic, what have you. I mean, there is a path to making this town more sustainable through working with all of those issues.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I squeaked a little bit, but no.
Well, I just wanted to say first that it wasn't really my research. It was Tom Franks, Michael, other people. I went through a bunch of it, but they actually did the research. And then I guess on the surface it seems a little scary maybe that this is the idea of funding a position that's sort of self-directed in this way, but I think that's sort of how it has to be for something like this. I mean, we don't have the answers. It's not just an implementation position, it's a planning position. They're gonna come in and apply their expertise and come up with plans that are, across different disciplines, that are working on bigger problems, and those plans will include, here's why this is important, here are the priorities, here are the actions we're gonna take, here are how we're gonna measure this is how we're gonna report on this. And that's stuff, we've sort of struggled with this early in the process of thinking like, well, we want this to be a practical position where we measure what's being done, where we have criteria for success, where it's not just someone going out and having a bunch of public events and making people feel good that Brattleboro is spending money on sustainability. We want it to be something really practical. But we don't know, I at least am sort of a enthusiastic amateur in the field, right? I have no degree, I have no experience in sustainability. This was me going through some publicly available information, doing my best to pull out what made sense. I am not qualified to be a sustainability coordinator. We're hoping for someone who has experience and will apply that to Brattleboro's problems and come up with a plan. So I think the first year likely may be research and planning. And then year 2, you might start to see more implementation. So everyone I've talked to wants it to be practical, wants there to be measurement, wants there to be measurable goals. But it's just a little bit of a catch-22 in that way, because I think that person, when they're hired, will be the one who's best qualified to make that plan. That's sort of how we've been thinking about it.
I think you almost answered a question for me, is implementation, like how does that look? Can we play out a scenario of what the nuts and bolts of what this position is actually going to achieve, and how seriously are they going to be taken, especially if they're working with all these different, existing.
Yeah. I'm almost becoming concerned that whoever we hire won't be able to survive the position because the amount of emotional loading we're putting on it, I mean, I'm thinking of any other position, we're about to hire a river steward in Connecticut, and oh my God, I would be terrified, you know, like the intensity of the amount of thought going into this, so I'm just saying that because as I'm hearing this in the room, this is actually what I'm feeling emotionally in my body is like, wow, what a loaded position this is going to be.
I think it is.
And God bless whoever gets hired in it with the intensity of the expectations that the town is putting on them. So I'm saying that out loud now so that perhaps there can be some, I don't know, processing of that or thought. Because this could go so many different ways. And the person can bring so many things with them that no one in this room or even the town has thought about, right?
Yes.
And they're also going to bring with them things they have to learn. So I'm just trying to pull up a little compassion for the reality of like how things unfold when you hire someone, you know?
Definitely. And I think I have tried to be very, even in the stuff that I put down on paper, very realistic about, you know, this person is not going to change the world, even just for Brattleboro, probably on, I mean, they might change Brattleboro on a couple of these bullet points over 5 years, something like that. And I trust the town staff to make sure that this person is only working 40 hours a week and isn't going home every weekend and just overcome by they're gonna, as long as, there are going to be people with higher expectations, sure, but I hope we can frame it in such a way that, yeah, this is one person working one 40-hour week every week. They're not going to solve every problem or most problems, but that doesn't mean they can't have sort of a fulfilling, reasonable job experience and still be valuable to the town. So I think you're totally right, but yes, Michael.
I just think, you know, there are some people out in, who have experience now in this type of job. Whether we'd be able to attract that type of person or not, I don't know. But so they know what's involved, the complexity and the expectations, and that they'd be getting into. So I don't think they'd be surprised. You know, the people that we might end up hiring that might not have the experience but went through a good graduate program would understand the complexity of, you know, working in a sustainability coordinator position. They might not have full appreciation of, you know, expectations, but I think if the graduate program did a good enough job training them, they'd know, you know, that they're really getting into something that's, you know, has a lot to it. I think then it becomes up to the, you know, the people who oversee the person to, you know, also help manage expectations. So I guess I'm not as worried about a person coming in and just sort of giving up after half a year because, oh, I can't please everybody.
And like, I'm kind of, I want to be mindful of the town because the planning commission has their consultant here for downtown design plan. But I do want to say, I mean, in terms of getting started, I do think there's lots of actions in the town plan that aren't being, I mean, I just pulled it up and I'm looking, review the town procurement policy manual to ensure energy conservation and efficiency are key purchasing criteria. I mean, there's a whole bunch of little things to kind of get started, even do an agricultural lands inventory across, like, this is kind of daunting, but it's kind of all falls under sustainability. So I think this policy list sometimes does seem really overwhelming.
About the conditions under which these documents went to a person. They might go as part of the application process, maybe as sort of a, hey, here's what we've been thinking, but I would never expect the coordinator to sit down at their desk on day one and get handed this and say, you know, here you go, start at the top and work your way through. If you do one a week, you'll be done in a couple years.
And a lot of this comes from the STAR community, correct? So, I mean, these are actually, you can measure some of these things so we can see where Brattleboro falls on that scale and then figure out maybe what rises, where we need more.
And if it makes people, it made me feel a little more comfortable to realize that, you know, this is a real discipline. This is something people go to college for. This is something, the STAR LEED certification is a serious group that puts real thought into measurement. And there's stuff we can, it's an emerging discipline, but there's stuff that we can draw on that this person will be able to draw on. They're not going to be coming in facing all these problems with nothing. There will be resources and examples from other communities and stuff like that for them to work off of. So hopefully that'll make it a little less overwhelming.
Okay, and then are you anticipating actually any opposition or objection from the select board? I mean,
hard to say. I've been told not to expect much. I think it will at least, I don't know, I guess I don't.
I would expect questions like this.
Yes.
And like, I mean, not necessarily pushback, but just like, can you elaborate? And whoa, this seems like a lot.
Right.
Is this realistic? And all of those things. I think we're hopeful that we can still get a yes vote, especially given that that could be 3 out of 5. But we'd love to have 5 out of 5 vote for it.
I think there's a very good chance we get 5 out of 5. It's not a sure thing.
And in relationship to the either or question, because the select board could decide to take the 100,000 and put it into programs
Yep.
instead of a position, do you have a very strong argument that makes the case for the fact that this position will bring Brattleboro, make Brattleboro more sustainable on a number of different fronts in a way that programs won't?
I mean, I think that was part of the Visions for Success document. It's like impossible. I mean, if you just put $100,000 towards programming, then it's done. And so it's not ongoing work necessarily. It may be harder also to get that $100,000 to stay in the budget each year if it's looked at as more of like a one-time project-based or grant-based. But yeah, I mean, we had talked about kind of coming up with some ideas for ways to spend money that's not in a position, especially if in this first year the hiring isn't done. Like, it's not going to be a $100,000 position for this fiscal year because we're not going to hire until. So we also, we're going to propose a couple ideas of we could spend the money in this way also. But I think we're really trying to push forward why we feel like a person is the best.
This group,
the best way forward.
Our group came to a clear conclusion that we thought this was the best way forward. I mean, there are a lot of reasons to think that it is. There are a lot of examples from other towns that are very happy with their positions, that have, re-upped their positions and post their success stories, and this is something that is being adopted more and more across the country. I mean, it's really hard, I think, to look at these two things and try and figure out, what's the value of $100,000 worth of municipal weatherization versus what a person could do. Like, those are just really hard things to sort of measure and judge, but I think because it's so interdisciplinary and because there's so much opportunity for a person to pull different threads together, talk to different organizations, that it's a really good situation for, like, the role makes a lot of sense for Brattleboro. It's hard to put like a score on how good the position would be for Brattleboro, but that's the conclusion the 20 or 30 people involved in the research and have sort of agreed on. Also, there are no, as far as I know, there are no other proposals right now. Like, there's nothing, the select board doesn't have something else they're considering, which would make it a little easier to make an argument versus this versus that.
Like, they could come back and say, why don't you just spend it on these
Right.
ways, but I think we could come back and say, like, who would oversee that? Who would decide those priorities? Who's gonna like find those weatherization packages or like, and so without a person, it's just giving somebody else more work to try to implement something. And I think I would like to, I mean, I totally hear what you're saying, Kathy, and I feel that way too, but I also feel like it's really exciting that this could be more of like a yes person who's like, yes, let's like do some of these things. And so often people, there just isn't the capacity to do them. And so there are these things in the town plan and there are these ideas that people in the public have or that nonprofits are involved in, or like Ralph's company may be involved in. And too often it's like, no, we don't have the capacity, we don't have the resources, we don't have the time, we don't know about it. And this could be like, yeah, let's do it. And that feels really exciting to me.
I think they need a cargo bike.
We talked about it in the planning department.
That would be awesome.
Some time, actually.
We should have put that into the budget
A department
for them.
bike.
Yeah,
We used to talk about that all the time.
Assuming we hire a competent person, I can't imagine any scenario in which all their time is not taken up fulfilling duties. I don't think this is something that like they're gonna be wondering how to do their job and fill their time. There is so much work to be done. And in the next 15 to 20 years, climate change is also an ongoing thing. The situation is getting worse. This is about staying ahead of the curve, putting someone in place now, and that as things start to happen and change, and believe me, they will, we have someone there that has an ear to what is going on and is going to be there to help the town.
Thank you. So you guys need to.
So I'm still curious about the implementation. I can't speak of like what it looks like. You know, you said yes when almost answered the question before.
Yes. Let me just. You guys.
So what all I wanted to say is this is a really great conversation. I'd love to keep it going. We do have our paid consultant here.
Yes.
So I want to be respectful
Of
of her
course.
time in our budget as well.
Sure.
So that's all.
I can.
That's fine. Yeah, later.
Also talk to you.
It's all good.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, do you want us to vote on this now? Is this something that we can let settle a little bit before we take a vote on it? Or how do the commissioners feel about voting to endorse
Or is
this?
it more like, do you want a presence at the select board?
Yeah.
I mean, I would love
Both.
I would love both. Logistically, it's on the agenda for next Tuesday, so I don't know if you have another opportunity, but I don't want you to vote for it if you don't feel like you're ready for that.
How do you all feel?
How do you feel?
I'm like, yeah, let's go.
Was there clarification on the clarification question?
No. I mean, I think this is, I actually, you know, I want to compliment you all on your incredible work. I think it's quite remarkable. My only proviso is that it strikes me that the Brattleboro Select Board should adopt a set of values that are essentially inherent in this document, which previous to hiring the position, so that then the position actually is a hell of a lot easier to just do, because the values have already been adopted and then the person just gets to do their job. But that's way beyond my brief. So.
I feel really good about it, especially if all these folks in the room are feeling good about it too. You know, if everybody's on the same page, then.
And the select board meeting, is it 6?
Starts at
6:15.
6:15, but it won't be the first thing on the agenda, but.
So do you all want to vote to endorse it? We need to call our meeting to order in order to do that, I guess, right? Because we can't.
Yes.
We would have to do that. So do you want to get your people to vote and then close your meeting and so we can open
Sure.
ours?
Well, we have to like approve minutes and stuff. We might just
Yeah.
go somewhere else and finish our meeting.
Okay, or, so we can actually open our meeting while you're still here, can't
Yeah, I
we?
mean, we probably didn't do it exactly correctly,
All
but
right.
we were meeting as a quorum, so.
Oh, okay, so
When
so-
Oscar opened it, it was kind of open.
Okay, so
in
he
my
opened both
minutes.
meetings. So we're in session.
Did you not think you were in session? I'm sorry if I wasn't.
I wasn't clear on that.
I mean, anytime there's a quorum, it's.
We're in session.
We're in
All right.
session.
So
Boom.
does somebody want to make a motion?
I move that we vote to support the hiring of a sustainability coordinator as defined by the Energy and Public Committee.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Are those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm putting it on my calendar to try to be at the select board meeting as well.
great.
Yes. Anyone who can
Several of
be,
us can't be there from the work.
I will be there.
I could be there.
I can get the internet.
Thank you.
All right, we will get out of here so you can have.
Thank you very much.
If
Yeah,
anybody,
thank
so
you.
do you think you're going downstairs? Because if anybody comes looking for your meeting.
Yeah, if that room is open, we'll be in the downstairs.
Yeah.
And that's the local history room.
No, the one like there, at the,
The smaller one?
yeah, with the table and 6 chairs.
Are there any announcements?
I have no announcements.
Any announcements? No announcements.
Shakespeare in the Park was wonderful. Thanks to the town for supporting arts in the, public spaces.
Harold's ankle.
Yeah.
Are there public comments? No. Do we need to approve the minutes from May 6th?
We do.
So, the minutes for May 6th, where are they?
They are in the Google Drive.
Kathy, your turn on the website.
I have
says it
copies.
expires
In the minutes
6/28.
folder.
They're on-
Uh-oh,
they're
it
on
says
there.
drop files
Check the
here.
website.
I don't see any.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
mine's
it
not
does.
popping, mine's not popping up
It said,
either.
it said you expired last year, so I think the
So
website's
I'm
not.
expired on the website.
Try reloading it, what happened to
We
me?
have some.
Oh, really?
Mhm. Or just going
Yes, you-
back and
you
forward
maybe
again?
There was some discrepancies between offices, and I will be straightening out. You are okay. Kate, you are okay.
I just thought I'd go and check, so I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, here they are.
We'll be straightening
Oh, no.
that out.
I
Thank you.
am not okay.
They're in the meeting, they're in the planning commission.
Their minutes,
Meeting
it says drop files here. I have minutes for this meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Are you
No,
in
you're in
agendas?
agendas.
Yeah, I have.
Planning commission
You have one.
minutes.
Mhm.
Ah.
They're already-
I told
Where the
ya.
hell's May? That one's
What's that?
easy.
I have it here, but.
I did, just till everybody gets comfortable.
This happened.
Sure, you can't vote.
I'm not gonna vote, but it's nice to see.
I'm good.
If it opens, I'll use it until it opens on my computer.
Oh, yeah, I remember this. Are we good?
In June, we did not have a quorum, so no action needed on those notes.
So, move to approve the minutes. Is there someone who can do that?
We're approving May,
Do I ask
minutes of May
something
6th.
or bring something up before or
I
after that?
think there's discussion, we move, and then
Oh, right.
it's seconded, and then there's discussion. So we need a movement and a discussion. Oh,
I
that's-
move that we approve the minutes of Monday, May 6th, even though I wasn't there.
And then,
I'll second it.
discussion.
I would like, I remember that this meeting and one aspect we talked about that I thought would be pretty valuable for us would be if we got some kind of feedback or kind of the land use regs get circled back to us in the sense of the DRB and the zoning administrator, kind of showing us, kind of notes or a summary of their experience with enforcing them. And I know they do that from time to time, but I felt like the way we talked about it in May seemed like at least Brian has like this, I don't need to see, his notebooks or anything. I don't think we were saying that, but
So
it'd be good to
are you
see.
saying under G, project planning for
Right.
the upcoming year, that you want some feedback from the zoning
Yeah,
administrator?
I mean, like, do they feel like the land use regs are great, are perfect? Or is there these difficulties and areas that are confusing and keep popping up and people misinterpret things when they call them, so.
Okay, I can include a bullet point on that. Just to respond to
Mhm.
that, we have done that before. I think before you got on the
Okay.
planning commission, we did
Like
have a
yearly
joint
or something.
meeting
Yeah.
last summer. It hasn't been yet yearly, but it's kind of been
It was
every
the
2
first
years
week
or
of
so.
It was great.
And Brian does constantly feed problem areas, but
Yeah.
yes, I mean,
Well, great.
the joint
Yeah.
planning commission and DRB meeting when
Yeah.
we've been addressing zoning is really useful.
Okay.
But yes,
Great.
I will
I look forward to the
include,
next one.
do you have a way you want it worded, or do you want me to just suggest something here?
However you think's best, yeah.
How about,
Making sure to, reschedule another joint meeting.
okay, as a short-term priority,
Mhm.
schedule a joint planning commission, DRB meeting to discuss the land use regulations.
Mhm.
Okay.
All good? More discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, minutes pass. I'm sorry, I'm just out of habit. All right, back to the agendas. All right.
So we have Brandy Saxton from PlaceSense here with us tonight to kick off the downtown design plan. Do you want to pull up a seat?
Yeah, I might
Usually we
provide
push
some.
these together, so
I'll
it's
just
a
sit
little
on the
bit
end.
different tonight.
Does that work?
Yeah,
Work.
Okay, that way I can have my.
it's a little different meeting tonight. Yes. Starting earlier. So maybe we should go around and do introductions. because Brandy has worked with the planning commission before, but there's probably several
A couple of new
faces,
faces.
and Brandy's probably new to you.
I'm Josh Steele.
Brandy, Kathy, or
I'm Tom Moskowski. I was at the, what did we call that event? Just the interviews.
Yes.
I was at the interviews. John.
And Kate Odlin, we did work together last.
I'm Felicity, I was at the interview too.
I'm Jessica.
I'm Brandy. Happy to be here tonight to meet with you and get this project rolling at high speed.
Nice.
So, we have a particular agenda or?
Nope, I thought we'd kick it off with the schedule and the public engagement that
Okay.
you sent around,
Yep.
that all the planning commissioners received
Yep.
last week as well.
The public engagement strategy. is that what-
Yes.
Yes. And that includes the schedule to some extent, which I think we need to lock down tonight. And then if we're all on the same page about the overall approach and direction, basically need to start organizing the outreach effort basically tomorrow to get this going. So what I've done in the engagement strategy was to build off the approach and scope that was in the proposal, to try to just outline who it is we're trying to get a hold of, start brainstorming the groups, and then lay out the schedule for that first, essentially to get us through October, the beginning of October with this project, which is the major public outreach push to go through. So I guess we can kind of talk about that in conjunction with the approach that was in the proposal, which isn't exactly, in the engagement strategy word for word, but just to.
Brandy, can I just stop this and then maybe we can give an overview of the
Yes,
proposal?
I don't know
I
how
know that
much-
I put it on the
Yeah.
drive so you could all see the proposal, but maybe we should
Yes.
back up and kind of start with you introducing it.
Okay, so that's a good point. So I should have asked to start off with how many people had actually sort of read through and had a good handle on what was being proposed to be done in the first place. So we can start with that. So the proposal is to have two sort of major participatory planning events occur. One is a pop-up demonstration event, the Better Block Challenge event, which ideally we're going to form 3 teams of community members to implement and build pop-up demonstrations and sort of have a weekend in September where those are in place, and have other outreach events around those to demonstrate some of those kind of alternative uses for public space, ways to bring creative placemaking or arts or just sort of outdoor gathering spaces, alternative transportation options into existing spaces downtown. So that component, the unique idea we have, if we can manage to get everyone coordinated in time and get it going, is to actually run it kind of like a reality TV, think of Home and Garden TV, competition show to redo your neighborhood kind of thing. So if we have the teams and we try to do some filming with community TV folks to get some bits of that, it could be a really good way to sort of build some interest in public participation in the second component of the project, which would follow after this a couple weeks later, the design charrette. So it sort of flow from one activity to the next. And then the design charrette will have a focus around the Bridge Street intersection, but we'll more broadly look at downtown as well. We've got on the broader team an architectural firm from up in Hanover,
landscape architect that I've worked with before, Paul Simon, and I think Amy McCrellis, who some of you know and I've worked with before, to work on stormwater from Stone Engineering. So we've got a really well-rounded team to work on the charrette piece, which would sort of be, once again, a 3-day activity spanning sort of a Thursday, Friday, Saturday kind of time slot, with then a later wrap-up public meeting with a number of different components within it to gather input from various stakeholders and to work on what the options and ideas people have for using public spaces and for how public space would be transformed by changes in traffic flow and circulation in that area. So with those are the two big outreach components of the project, and they will provide the feedback and input that we need to go forward and then do the downtown design plan after that. So that piece, that first phase of this project would wrap up in, say, early October, and then from there, spending time on the plan till sort of coming back around in January, February with a plan that builds on those. So that's the overall scope of the project, and really the key to this being successful is a really good outreach campaign and strategy. Making sure that we're being very inclusive and getting folks involved, trying to get as much as we can in terms of existing groups engaged with us on this, because there's clearly a lot of groups doing things in Brattleboro, not necessarily always coordinated, so the idea is to try to build some greater connections between existing groups, encourage collaboration, that sort of thing in doing this. So that's the reason for starting with a fairly detailed engagement strategy and really thinking about who we need to get involved and laying out a pretty specific timeline and activities and materials that we're going to need to make that happen. Questions?
I have one question, which is the project overview, the sort of key things that you're supposed to address and we're supposed to address in the plan have these 4 points: pedestrians and bicycles, green stormwater, creative placemaking, long-term economic stability. In the Better Block Challenge, do we ask people to focus specifically on these things, or do we just take whoever wants to play along with this?
So in putting together the materials for the Better Block Challenge, the first thing that sort of has to be done when I said we can get rolling this week, this is sort of the stuff that has to start happening, is you need to put together what it is you're going to want from sort of a submission package from the groups, because if you end up with more than 3 interested, we're kind of, I think, limited in terms of spaces and budget to 3. I mean, we might be able to make 4 if we had 4 really excellent ones, but we don't have an unlimited capability of taking on additional groups. So we are going to need some criteria and some structure. I think one thing that I thought of that would be, I would suggest that we put into the criteria for choosing groups would be collaborations with, that sort of stretch across some of our stakeholder groups as well, so that we are encouraging that sort of cross-fertilization amongst existing groups. But I think, yes, we would definitely be highlighting these. Now, the green stormwater infrastructure, that one may be a bit hard for some of sort of lay groups to necessarily take on. There might be some folks who want to incorporate those kind of ideas. Certainly, you regularly see sort of pop-up projects that provide for bicycle parking, where they're transforming places where there have been car parking to bicycle parking. And then the economic one, clearly there's a lot of these that are just sort of like, we've made an outdoor cafe space that's interesting and fun, or something like that. So, and obviously most of them have some sort of creative placemaking component that goes along with those. So I would say the one that will be the most challenged in the demo projects might be the green stormwater infrastructure one, but maybe we'll get something interesting to comes along, somebody wants to build a rain garden on the street.
Probably not in the street.
Or in the parking lot, somewhere.
I think the collaborator with the green stormwater infrastructure, who was that? I didn't hear what you said.
We have Stone Engineering and Amy McCrellis who will be working with us. So she's probably one of the top stormwater gurus in the state. So she's done a lot of the stormwater manual writing and stuff like that. So she'll be a good asset. And she's very hands-on, so she's excited about this project because she's really likes the idea of being able to get out. When I first met Amy, she was out digging holes, and so she was covered in mud. She really likes to get in the field.
So if we have a really enthusiastic placemaker who says, I want to get my hands into green stormwater,
Mhm.
can you support that person
Yes,
if that
so-
person just has one skill and wants to develop another?
Yeah, so the one thing that we are going to do, and the reason why one of the reasons we need to limit the number of teams is that we are, the larger consultant team is going to provide technical support to those community volunteers who will be putting these together. So we have Ward Joyce from Montpelier, who I think you have one of his parklets.
It's been rebuilt, but the parklet in front of People's Bank is based on the one that was here last summer was actually his from Montpelier.
So
He's done a lot of.
He's done a lot of those, yeah. And so he's one of the teams, and I think I have secured someone from Local Motion to come and help as well. So it's a bit of a scheduling thing. I need to figure out exactly who's available on the dates. So this is once we've locked this in, I'll have a much better idea of exactly who we have. And then we have Chrissy, who you've met with. She's going to help support the teams, and Paul Simon and then myself and Amy will also be available. So we should have a fairly broad group of people who have the ability to help support this. We're not going to hammer all the nails, but
And there is a small budget from the grant for those that we
for the
choose.
materials and such.
For materials only, right?
In the budget, I was envisioning it being about $500, which should be plenty for materials. It's not going to cover time necessarily.
So the idea is, do we target people that we think want to get engaged in this, or do we throw out a whole bunch of feelers and get as many people who want to be engaged in it?
I think we do both.
Okay.
When we did the public art RFP, as an independent citizen not associated with town, I hosted a little idea jam at the Latches where I invited the arts community, the greater arts community, to come and just sort of, come with their ideas. And we talked about what the RFP was, what they were specifically looking for, and then we sort of shared everyone's sort of thoughts and ideas, and then let people talk to each other, and then at the end allowed them to make an offer to the group if they'd heard an idea and they wanted to help with organizing, or if they had resources that they wanted to share. It was a really great way to sort of get the community engaged and thinking about ideas in that early phase.
Have you, stupid question maybe, I'm thinking we're missing 4 people on the energy committee, right? So I'm like, will there really be volunteer groups that step up to do this? I know people.
I think there will be.
Yeah? Yeah. I mean, so have you used this model in other communities and had folks engage?
That is generally the model of getting community groups to work on these, is the model for when communities do them on a larger scale. So, obviously I mentioned Ward, he builds these things and they go into place as, an installation. It's a little more permanent and a little more professional. But Burlington has a program where they have, they've actually come up with guidelines, and neighborhood groups can propose something and come in and get approval for it and install these sort of projects. And then the big project that was done in Bethel a couple of years ago, Better Block project there. That was a series of community groups, and they probably had 4 or so different installations along the street there during that weekend that they had there set up. We're not blessed with good weather, so I hope we do better than that.
And I think that gets to the point of it's a little bit of throwing it out there, but it's also reaching out to people. So there's a lot of advocacy groups that I think would be interested in this.
Yeah, and then another question is, for this, how would this interface with the stuff that's already happening? Like, do you see them as potential groups, or?
When you say the stuff that's already happening, are you talking about the transportation center?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that.
And the downtown group.
The downtown, yeah, that's, yes.
And the trails discussions, and, yeah,
Yep. Nope, definitely trails, downtown, DBA is working hard at the transportation center, so they might be interested in another pop-up. We actually moved our Better Block challenge off of, it was originally gonna be the same weekend as that, but we had some discussions with them, and because there's this kind of event focused in getting people to the transportation center, we didn't want too much competing at the time, so maybe September just becomes the pop-up month. The public can be looking for cool things, temporary installations in the downtown.
So what's the carrot? The carrot is the potential that your idea becomes permanent, or is the carrot that you get to
play?
do something?
Yeah,
and
that's,
have
I guess,
people
where I was thinking.
see
like,
what
why
you've
would-
done.
Yeah.
No, it's more of you've got this vision of change for downtown, and you get a chance to demonstrate it in the hopes that, that maybe there'll be some sort of permanent change in the future. But think the trails groups, maybe they're looking for some sort of trails connection, and it's or signage, I don't know, it's just something to be able to demonstrate what the value of it would be to the downtown.
So it's a publicity opportunity for groups that have something they are advocating for, certainly. And we are going to look at incorporating the ideas that are generated through the process into the actual downtown design plan. So we're going to have feedback forums for the people who come through and see, sort of get a sense of what people like and they don't like. So that will definitely help influence the planning process as we continue on. And it's...
Brandy, sorry. On the flip side of that kind of concern of maybe not enough applicants, if there's many, are you going to facilitate kind of playing matchmaker and maybe teaming people up to maybe make them more effective and have more resources?
I mean, that's certainly an opportunity. And what I was envisioning, and it's in the schedule, is that the Planning Commission would be the selection committee for the project teams. I think that's certainly an avenue that we could consider, is that if you have similar proposals of asking them to
See if they want to work together.
combine to their forces.
Because you said there's enough room for 3 groups.
There's definitely enough room for 3. If we were really pushed, we could probably make 4 happen. I think one of the questions is trying to find spaces for them. So if they are a group and they have an idea for a space, that's great. If they don't have an idea for where this can happen, then we're trying to find them a space for it. Yeah. So if they either need to go into a public space or have a private property owner that's willing to host it on private property, and there are some implications that we are going to have to work through on the administrative side of that.
So it's something this is completely driven by other folks' ideas and volunteer time, right?
Mm-hmm.
For this first phase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all this needs to happen on your calendar by August 13th, because if we're supposed to make the decisions about the team selection on the 14th, we would need to see them sometime before the 14th.
Yep.
Ideally, more than a day.
Yeah, I mean, this is something to think about too, about in terms of the submissions, having them come in and give you a presentation of what they want to do, or versus just, some sort of written, submission. So that's something we can talk about as we go through the timeline and schedule a little bit, to think through what it is you might want. I haven't really filled that part out, so I want to talk to you guys first. Get a sense of how you might want to proceed. But yeah, so our entire schedule is based off of working back from the 2 sets of dates that Sue and I have put together that we think will work for the Better Block Challenge and then for the charrette. So if we are working off of having the weekend for the Better Block Challenge is September 20 to 22nd. So we need to work backwards from that, and we're going to need to have the team selected because they're going to need 3 to 4 weeks to build the thing, and do that. So then we're back into the middle of August. So to hit you guys, a little bit in the first half, towards the end of the first half of August, so that you've done the selection, so that gives them the time to go ahead and build. And so that is where we're backing right up through the schedule. The one concern I have is that we were going to do this kickoff meeting initially in our schedule on July 10, and I think it's too tight given that we're meeting tonight and we haven't started noticing the meeting yet. So I think we should push that one to the 17th as long as the dates work and the times work, and then we have enough time to really do that. And I was thinking that meeting is similar to what you were saying, that we are going to have some presentations about what is the concept of a pop-up demonstration, and then time for Q&A and for people to mill about and just generate some ideas and start forming up teams that way, or generate people that they would like to get involved.
Brandy, will Ward be coming to that meeting? Or
Yes.
will he be presenting because he's really
Yep.
dynamic?
Yes. Yes. So the idea would be that I think we'll have 3 or 4 of us, and we'll do some presentation, So I've got Ward is definitely booked for it, and then depending on where we land, likewise, I think we'll have Paul as well, and we'll see from there.
So you guys
Let me
have
know about
names
that.
of people that you are, and you're presumably going out and doing all this outreach, or are the commissioners doing that?
You and I, commissioners, myself, will need to, if you know people that you can talk to, I've already talked to some to let them know that we'll have this opportunity coming this summer, but it's kind of part of what we're firming up tonight, so that I can get out to them with some material.
Yeah, so that's the partners and stakeholders component of this strategy. I think one of the things I would definitely ask from the Planning Commission is for you all to go through this and to add your knowledge to that list.
Oh, wow, okay, all right.
And help with that. We don't know, it doesn't necessarily have to be during this meeting tonight, but we'll certainly look through it, and if people have ideas, we can throw them in, but just thinking through and starting to pull from the base we have here.
You're talking about the list at the bottom of the...
Page 3.
Yeah, it starts on page
4.
3 and carries on through the end of page 6. So, and they are grouped based on, sort of thinking of whom the sort of stakeholder entities might be, based around those sort of 4 points that were in your original request and are sort of the basis for what we're trying to do with the downtown plan. So, do you want to walk through this? We've kind of talked through the schedule a little bit, but we can kind of walk through the envisioned outreach schedule. It starts on page 9 here of the thing. I think actually that could be a good way to, and then we can go back to the groups after you get a better sense of where we're headed on this.
I do have a comment on that contact list that's been built. Do you want me to save it for later? We come back to it.
I have some
Just
ideas
run
too.
through the contact list and
We want to start with the contact list?
maybe.
Okay.
Just an overall impression on it is that a lot of the people on here are working at nonprofits or in the arts, and may not have the capacity to take a leadership role on a project like this. Thinking about inviting businesses or Rotary clubs or groups like that in, I think, would help fill that leadership void.
Yeah, I think the intent, if you go back to page 3, is to get the contact list from the DBA. So definitely reaching out to the downtown business community. And residents as well. But yes, if there are other organizations like Rotary, we can get those in here as well.
Is anybody on the planning board a Rotary member?
No. Yeah, I guess I was thinking, in addition to the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance, the Chamber and the Rotaries, both of the Rotaries are a good idea.
And there are some employers downtown that may not be part of the Downtown Business Alliance that may contribute employee time to a project like this.
My suggestions for number 1, but I guess in a sense it would include all of them, is to send a notice out to Front Porch Forum and select Facebook groups, like the Brattleboro Facebook page.
Yeah, and some of that is back.
I think there's like 6,000 people on that.
Yeah, back up into the methods.
I mean, a lot of them don't live here anymore, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the West Brattleboro Association,
Oh, okay.
Michael's the chair of the West Brattleboro Association. It seems like that group, there might be some people in that group who might be interested in this, even though it's
It's their town too.
in West Brattleboro. Are there more groups like the West Brattleboro Association that kind of?
There used to be a Clark Canal one, but I've heard it's defunct at this point.
There's also Press the Feet. Kate, is that still quite active?
Yeah, semi-active. I think it's been a little quiet, but they're working on the mural project off and on. I haven't gone.
What was that one I missed?
Feet, Frost Elm,
Oh,
Elliott
yes.
Triangle.
Yes.
And there's some Green Street Promise Communities. There was discussions about how to kind of keep that active, so
Yeah, I don't know.
there's a couple of people I could reach out
Going
to.
anywhere. I was on that, but I don't know.
Yeah, those are the
Wasn't
ones.
Emily,
I can help with
Emily in that?
contacts.
Maybe we should talk to our legislators. They could-
I was going to try to make Emily go through this list. She owes me a favor. I designed her winning campaign sign.
Nice.
Well, she's out there with youth services.
I think that actually the town parks
Yes.
office should be
We did.
included. I don't see it listed somewhere.
They are down, I think, under they're at the end under municipal departments.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And how about the Energy Committee? They've done all this work. I mean, maybe they have some ideas about green stormwater. They could jump on that, design something.
Who you said?
The Energy Committee.
Okay.
Is the Housing Trust on this list?
I don't think so.
There's
Maybe they
Windsor,
should- Yeah, they should.
Yeah, they
Housing
should be.
Trust, and
They've got downtown properties.
does the Housing Authority have downtown?
They do. They have the Samuel Elliott.
That's right. So Brattleboro Housing Authority is another.
Historical Society? That was a
That'd be good.
question. Yeah?
Yeah. No, that would be good.
And the Senior Center is located downtown.
Oh, yeah, how about the Stone Church people?
Oh my God.
Yeah, they should be, I mean, I'm assuming like CCV, like they would be captured under the
Oh,
downtown
right.
business owners
Businesses,
somehow.
right.
Private.
What?
For the Section 5 bicyclists, my mind thinks of V-Bike
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Dave Cohen.
Dave
It's
is,
a
well, he's
kind of-
part of the BCAT, the Brattleboro Coalition for Active Transportation.
Oh, he is?
They are on here.
Oh,
yes.
great, okay.
So is the idea that these people are hand, sorry, it's been a long meeting. You go to them person by person, or is there emails that go out to all these different?
So our plan is to do an email blast. So let me just go back to the plan here of what we're gonna do. So if we can put together as much of an email list as possible, we'll do that. We do and then at the same time do the social media and front porch forum stuff, the same messaging, and your sort of traditional press release stuff, so that we go out to the various media things as well. So it's a broad.
Brattleboro.
Yeah. But we do want to try to build an email list as much as possible, so that we can keep people's interest as we go through this process. And so I think some of these are definitely, we are going to want to make personal contact with some of these groups and follow up as well. You know, certainly I think that first email will say, you know, we'll be advertising this upcoming meeting, but then subsequent ones, I believe, will be like, you know, you have questions, you want more information, you know, if you're interested. So there's really sort of a campaign that would start, like I said, basically tomorrow, and build through this public this first kickoff meeting, and then sort of the next 2 weeks afterwards. That's really the targeted time to get people who are interested to put together some sort of proposal for a pop-up.
Do you want to also include the middle school?
I think one of the challenges with the schools in general is that it's summer.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure.
Is the library included?
I was just thinking about the library because
They did it, I mean.
they
I
did a
was
letter
thinking
of
about
support
the
for us
meals
and, yeah.
program. There's a lot of kids here for that.
And I know the director is interested in participating, so yeah,
So
I
we
was
should
gonna feed that one, I
definitely
think, as
think
well.
So it sounds like we need to do an announcement and then see what comes of that, and then target people directly, by personal invite and personal
Yeah,
contact.
we're definitely, to make this successful, we really do need to build some enthusiasm. So that's really critical. So as wide a net that we can cast, and then some fairly robust follow-up with folks to try to get people interested and excited. The one good thing is that we've got the ability to use a lot of Ward's really fabulous photos of how great these things can be. So we've got, I think, some good visual stuff that we can definitely use to get people excited about what possibilities might be. Chrissy had some really great photos as well of events from, I think, the St. Paul, Minneapolis area where she used to live. She'd been somewhat engaged in several of these projects in that area. So I think, and we've got some good examples to help people start to think about interesting ideas, and I don't think there's a lack of creativity in Brattleboro, so hopefully we can build on that.
So are you sending out like an email blast with these pictures and things?
That would be the idea. For those of you who were around for the land use regulations, we actually did that as we got towards the end. We started doing more public outreach with fairly good results of sending out sort of just short. Over the time of that project, we had built an email list, which, to be honest, you know, I might still have, might still be valid to some degree, and had, you know, short messages. They usually had some sort of visual graphic and a short message about what's going on. And then we'll also have for this a project website where there'll be more detail and more information, and then ability to send questions and comments and get us to get back to people and respond.
So we could then take that email blast and send out personal emails.
Mm-hmm.
Would you want us to follow up with people on the list, or send it to our independent contacts, or?
I am open to any and all ideas for expanding the scope of our outreach campaign at this point. So if you are willing to do that, that is excellent and would be much appreciated and welcomed.
And is that us contacting them, or is that us giving you the information and your contact?
Whichever
No,
you wish to do.
well, I mean, ideally, if you can make some outreach, I think it's our project. I don't think that necessarily having Brandy as the consultant following up it's not my preferred method. I think we have the relationships with people, so I think we need to be doing the outreach as we can.
You can certainly direct people, who have more specific questions or need more information and things like that, so.
And the first ask is come to this event.
Yeah, or, we're gonna start working on the downtown plan. We've got this really cool, we're gonna do a pop-up placemaking event. We're looking for groups that might wanna do something for it or submit a proposal and come, this day, this time, come down, check it out. It's really inspiring.
Yeah.
But I trust all that'll be in your email.
We'll
like send it.
Right,
Say,
and
hey,
so you
don't miss
said
it.
that your company would be probably July 17th.
That would be my recommendation, is that we push that from the 10th to the 17th.
I think so too.
That's
the 10th is next week.
Yeah, I know, it's
some time of year too.
It is.
There's just like.
Yeah. So I think, by the time we manage to get to this point, I think the 10th is too soon. So I think there's adequate time in here if we push that to the 17th, and then we'll have enough time to really get on this. But my plan, is that, to spend like the next 2 days sort of cranking together and starting to package together materials. So I did just want to make sure that, I had met with you before I really rolled into production mode.
There's
so.
a DRB meeting that night and a tour of Allard Lumber.
Wow.
Tour of what lumber? Allard Lumber.
On Ferry Street.
Is competition with the DRB meeting a problem? In terms of personnel or?
Not in terms of personnel. No, there could be some interest, but I'm not sure that I would.
We're not gonna find it.
If Monday night works for you and your team, I'm not sure that pushing it off is a great idea. Just because there's gonna be other conflicting meetings.
I thought you said the 17th. It's a Wednesday.
Oh,
It is a Wednesday.
Yeah.
oh, that's right. Well, the DRB, sorry. They used to meet on Mondays, not Mondays.
Yeah.
This is the first
Okay.
month, or we moved to Wednesday. We have pizza. Do we
want to eat it?
Do we want to
Yes. The answer
pause?
is yes.
And,
Yes, people should eat.
yeah, I apologize. I'm happy to bring it out and we can continue the meeting, but maybe I should get it. I see the planning commissioners looking.
But you need to.
Yeah.
How many hours of work does
Is
it
that what
take
happened
to
to Harold? Is
produce
that why his name was
a
on
design?
Harold decided he didn't need to
Construct
stretch.
one of
And these things, they do not need to be that elaborate. The materials often seem to consist of pallets, things you find at the dollar store to decorate with, like paper umbrellas and spangles and spinners. It really depends what the group wants to do. So you see a lot of interesting things like setting up little games or little libraries or, like I said, little cafes and spaces. You can certainly do things that are more elaborate than that. And definitely you see some examples of that, but it's really meant to be, we did the Vermont, at the NECAPA planning conference, it was in 2017, we had a whole track on doing these. And they literally did a session in the afternoon where we went out and set up one, there was a trailer that had a bunch of materials in it. And a group of planners went out and basically built something
That's so cool.
in like a 2-hour. It wasn't brilliant, but it's like chalk paint that washes off, and bales of hay and that kind of thing. So,
And is the police department gonna work with us? Like, are they we gonna be closing up parking spots?
That's-
or closing-
that's
we're
what we
gonna
have to-
I'm gonna have to coordinate that.
That's the venue.
Big.
They're usually, I would
It's
say, in
nice
most
that Peter was
cases,
sitting here for a little bit.
yeah, yeah. Is you often see sort of the conversion of 1 or 2 parking spaces and, depending on how much sidewalk availability there is.
Jess, I don't think it is.
What?
What?
Okay.
I had it clicked, but it's not saying that it was. I'm very sorry. It's supposed to be.
What are you talking about? Are you gonna be all right? Did you eat the wrong food?
I ate the wrong food.
Oh,
It's not saying on this receipt that it was gluten-free, despite the fact that I did click that. Very sick. Sorry.
I'm not trying to harm you.
It's okay, I'll survive.
You can have my mushroom if you
No, it's probably contaminated.
What
want.
You'll be okay, right? Seriously.
Yeah, are you gonna be all right?
EpiPen or anything?
No, I think I needed.
Just making sure.
And it's all on camera.
You can edit that part out.
So do we have more questions on that? Do we need to talk more about that? Or are we good on that?
Well, I think we have in a hit and miss fashion.
Sort of that we're talking about right now, I know.
Sort of covered much of the outline. It's really sort of like I said, on a cycle of every week and a half to 2 weeks, as we go through this, there's going to be information pushed out again and again and again. And then we're going to do a meeting with DBA, Sue and I, and as we get around to the charrette, which is the next piece to talk about, other members of the consultant team will actually be coming and doing some prep work and meeting with targeted individuals or groups as we need to prepare for that piece as well. So it will evolve, and I'm going to continue to develop this outline and the strategy as we go along, so that it's both useful for the larger team and for you guys to make sure you see what we're doing and stay on track and help with the messaging.
Will you keep updating our thing in our Google Drive so we
Yeah.
always have a new one?
Yes, we can make sure that the Google Drive stays up to date.
So, it always seems to me, again, going back to how many people we've got engaged in the community, are we gonna have enough energy and enthusiasm to go through the Better Block and then do a 3-day design charrette? It seems like a lot of the same people are gonna be involved in both things.
I'm not sure if it's all the same people.
I would hope that most people who participate in the Better Block thing will also go participate in the charrette. The charrette is a series of activities, so it's not like you have to commit to spending 2 days involved in the charrette. It's a thing where we're going to have activities going on during gallery walk. People can drop in, come through, see what's going on. We're going to go out and do a series of sort of topic-specific walk-and talks throughout the day on Friday, so people with a specific interest can slot in kind of where they want to and give it whatever level of time that they want to. So on that end, there's less, the Better Block one is when we really need volunteer involved, and we always need people to participate in the charrette, but we don't need the same level of time commitment on the part of individuals necessarily. People can come and attend one meeting, they could, come to several different events throughout the 3 days, that type of thing.
Okay. So the Better Block Challenge is really the big thing.
It's really the big thing that we need to get people initially excited and engaged in. And then I think that will flow into interest in the charrette process as well. We'll have, so the actual Better Block event will be a great advertisement for the thing that's coming up in 2 weeks, you know, that type of thing. So I think that will feed pretty well. So I'm less worried about that than I am about getting this
The Better Block up and running.
which is a concern. But we can do this.
So I liked, so one of the things I'm gonna have to get on is a space for a meeting on the 17th, and I liked kind of having it someplace different, but there will be presentations.
Yeah,
right?
so I think if you're thinking about a space that we can do slideshow type activity in would be good, and, you know, a venue that we can have sort of people milling around a little bit maybe and talking and breaking out into groups could be useful as well. So I don't know, we can talk if you want a little bit more about the venue options, but.
About the foyer of the Brooks House.
Oh, that would be nice.
Big enough.
Yeah, big enough, and people could stumble in.
And it's the
And then they can go
downtown.
Nobody's gonna
outside too
stumble
if
in
they
here.
need to.
Co-op community room, I don't know if that's
It's
big
too
enough.
small.
Yeah.
That's a good
Do
suggestion.
you have a portable screen for projecting?
I've been doing a lot of different kind of work at the Stone Church, and it's been awesome.
Well, I thought that would be a good location too, but they're usually pretty booked,
Yeah.
but it's worth looking into.
And they have a bar, so.
Yeah.
Now, that would
That
bring
means they're
people in.
food now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the mole's eye. It's not really
Whatever
stumbled
happened to
into.
the
but-
mole's eye?
And they're trying to.
I don't know if they have occupancy, but
Just love that place. Let me check it out.
Yeah, that's sort of one of the next steps is to go through this, and where we have meeting types, we need to start filling in and booking venues out. So that's, the next time you see an update of this, there's gonna be more of that information filled in. So we're sort of working our way through the levels of detail that we're gonna need to carry this out.
Parking day?
Yeah,
Parking Day. It's international or national? I'm not sure. I think it might be international. It's like a parklet day, so it's a day for people to take over kind of parking spaces.
Push the cars out.
Mhm.
Take
It's
over
like
parking.
non-parking day.
It's like,
Yeah,
don't
it's
park
non-parking.
your day.
Don't worry, it's called Parking Day.
Wow.
Oh, funny, okay.
It's like for pop-ups.
I
Has
gotcha.
Brattleboro ever participated in that? Yeah.
So we should probably just make sure that everybody, that all of the commissioners know when they're gonna be called upon
what
to
days.
perform services other than the first Monday of every month.
Yes, I always want to know when I'm going to call them. I was
As
thinking,
I said,
like,
it's been a long meeting.
yeah, it would be good to pin these dates down so we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that first meeting was really the only one I was still, that was pretty questionable, which is why I had a question mark next to it. So if we move that to the 17th, I think where we've cleared these dates,
Do you want the
fairly well.
commissioners on all of these dates?
No. So I think you have, we would like to have planning commission presence through, you know, at the Better Block Challenge. I mean, not necessarily every, because it's going to be sort of put it up and it'll be in place for 2 days and then be taken down. But, you know, it would be great to have you guys around from time to time, but you don't need to commit to locking out your entire weekend, that weekend to it, unless you really want to. So we're going to have an information area set up with that. So they'll have the pop-ups, and somewhere we'll have a larger sort of kiosk or space set up with more information about the overall downtown plan, which would be a good spot for planning commissioners to come and inhabit for a little while and talk to people as they come by. And we'll have the feedback forms for the various pop-ups and things like that. So basically a place to provide information for people as to what's going on.
Would it be helpful for everyone if you gave us some direction, like each one of these days, and say, just an example, like you like 2 commissioners there on each date, and then we can like choose.
Then we can choose.
Yeah,
Maybe we
like,
can
just a schedule.
put a sign up in
Maybe do like
I would say, I mean, I
Yeah.
can kind of handle that. I don't
Okay.
think that that's something.
And that's something we can actually build into this overall chart thing too, if you want to
So then
do.
that way we can sign up for the days that we're available.
Right,
Rather than
right,
all
and then,
there on one
then
day.
we've got it covered
Yeah.
without, yeah.
And
That'd be
the
great.
same thing will be true of the charrette. That will be going on, there'll be a Thursday night kickoff meeting, so I think that would be a good place to try to make sure as many of you as possible can attend that. But then throughout the day on Friday and Saturday, I think if you're available to come and participate for a little while, that would be great. Recognizing everyone has lives and responsibilities, so we're not expecting that you're all going to camp out for the whole thing either. So, and that's one of the things, like the walk-in talks are going to be on Friday for those of you who do have flexibility, and if there's a particular topic that you want to be involved in, that's actually something, if you send me that information and what your availability is, I'm going to be setting those up, so I can certainly take that into consideration as well as we advance this along into the planning stages for what actual things are going to happen at what specific hours during that day.
So what do we need to accomplish tonight? Do you want some direction on the criteria for the pop-up?
We should talk about that a little bit. So my next steps are to put together the publicity materials for this initial blast out about the July 17 meeting, and sort of introduce the whole concept of the pop-up project. And then it will be to put together the materials for that meeting. So that's basically my to-do list for the week, is a portion of it. And so if we could talk through what you might find to be useful, and talk a little bit about the criteria for that, it would be good. So
How well do any of these people on this list do they have any knowledge that we're about to engage in a downtown master planning process?
Some do.
Some do, okay.
I do.
Well, that's good, great, you're on the
CRC
list.
knows. The library knows. I mean, I could go through the list. I won't.
Okay,
I won't
but
bore
so,
you.
so,
But yes,
so
people
there's
are-
not gonna be, you're not gonna, in this email blast, you're not gonna have to explain from the get-go. You can, as you know, blah, blah, blah.
well, I think we're going to need to
Just a
explain
little
from the
bit.
get-go a bit.
Keep it concise.
Concise,
yeah.
but there's going to need to be
Okay.
a setting of the stage for what we're doing. So, and my plan would be to put that stuff together and bounce it over to Sue. I don't know if you guys want to have an eyeball at it, and then be ready to deploy it after the holiday weekend. Essentially, nobody's going to pay anything attention to anything until next Monday. So.
Yeah, I'd like to look at it.
Yeah, okay. So if we're asking teams to put together some sort of a proposal for a pop-up demonstration, I think we're going to want to know who's involved, and one of the things that, like I said before, if they have an idea about a venue or a location for it, I think that is certainly information we're going to want in the proposal. And then, if we do end up with a wealth of applications, proposals, there's going to need to be some scoring criteria for it. So we're going to need to work on putting that together between now and then.
I think I'd like it to be fairly simple, because if we're asking volunteers, it should be kind of like a fillable.
Fillable form?
Yeah, and we just did one for the AARP. I'm trying to find the actual application. briefly describe your project idea. It was a 50-word max. I mean, this could even be shorter or whatever. Why it's needed in the community, desired outcomes, which might be a little bit technical for, the ask of a nonprofit, but
Yeah.
I think we can figure out what the outcome of somebody's proposal would be.
Yeah, I mean, we could, that's a place where maybe we could tie back those sort of project bullet points, doesn't address.
I'm not a creative person, so I'm really struggling with even getting my head around like what one of these would
So for
look
example,
like.
okay,
Or
so say you've got a transportation group, I'm just gonna throw something out, and they really wanted bike lanes on some road in downtown or coming into downtown. They could propose a demonstration project that maybe we would not have on-street parking on one side of the road for 2 days, and we get to demonstrate, a bike lane and how that would work.
And so that would actually,
And it could be
like,
hay
the
bales
police
and
would
shop.
say, you can't park here for these 2 days.
Yeah.
Yep, and that would be the demonstration.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the project up in Bethel, they did that.
Let's do that. That
They,
sounds great.
they blocked out and they did the chalk paint out sort of the green strip along the main street. So they took off they took out parking on one side and they did that. And then they did some additional crosswalks and marked those out. They've actually built the crosswalks in Bethel that they proposed during the, so that would be a good example for the initial meeting, the kickoff meeting.
I got an idea, but it's not downtown.
But
Closing off around the Vermont Country Deli, one of those streets.
Oh, God, that'd be great. But so, in an idea like that basically, once they've proposed it to you, who are then gonna run off to the police department and all the private businesses and get them to cover the parking meters, they haven't done, that's what they've done. So that took them all of.
Well, they would go out and actually install it. So there would be marking, there'd be temporary markings. There might be
It might be hay bales. It might be something.
pylons.
But you would you or somebody else would do all of the legalese.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, great. This seems much more feasible.
Yeah. It
Could
could
give
be.
me another example. Sorry, I suck at this. This is like not where my brain works.
Well, if you could
You're a restaurant.
you could build a garden over one of the gutters. And make it into a place, instead of being just a drain, it would be a place where there was actually plants and other things that were gonna absorb stormwater.
I feel like I want a deck over the train tracks.
That's not gonna happen.
Yeah,
It's gonna be hard to construct that out of house.
Here's shoot me down. Shoot me down here.
Well, that's also private, you can't.
So
you
the
can't
Preston lot.
invade
Kids are
any-
killing me.
Sorry.
I can block off half a street, but I can't get a deck over the train tracks to access the river. Okay, come on.
Here, the Preston lot in the
Which
UPA
one?
charrette. That's the one down across from the transportation center, the one that's on the West Stone Brook.
Okay, yeah.
Say, we've got a plan that says this would be a really great park. So maybe we want to demonstrate it as a park for the 2 days, and maybe we're gonna program it. So we're gonna have to close off that parking lot. We're gonna need to get permission to demonstrate that. Maybe we want a temporary stage, and there's gonna be some productions or music and things going on in the 2 days.
We're gonna make it rain.
We're gonna bring in some landscaping
Right,
because
that's
we want it to
$500
feel like a park.
Some green carpet, very popular in these pop-ups, the astroturfy kind of carpet.
Can you get that for $500?
I mean, maybe not for the whole Preston parking lot, but you could get it for a parking space if you were converting, like if it was something on Main Street or Flat Street. Maybe the Latches, or, maybe that somebody wants outdoor seating area to put out some tables for people to have their breakfast at. You could demonstrate an outdoor cafe or something.
Okay.
Do you have other?
Yeah, I mean, one of the other ones they did in Bethel were games. So they took some space that was sort of interstitial space between the street and in front of buildings, like, I think they had space in front of a church or something like that, that's, you know, kind of private but kind of public space that people might hang out in. And they installed like, you know, a big Jenga type thing and, you know, games with like throwing some rings over, for kids to play with and go down with their, or board
How do we
planners.
get from these types of, I mean, some, there's like an obvious moving it to what the downtown design would be, but things like that, how do you, where's the nexus with the actual downtown?
Well, it's the idea of bringing, you know, play space or gathering spaces downtown, what, you know, sort of different kind of programming of those spaces might look like.
And there's kind of an attempt to do that this summer through, DBA has the Summer on the Streets.
Mm-hmm.
They actually had Tai Chi this morning. I think it was over near the Harmony lot, it may have been on private space. They've had the Twister in Plenty Park and just some sort of activities. They've had music down on Whetstone Pathway, trying to just get people to engage in the spaces. So, yeah, so that's kind of a programming thing.
Okay, that's helpful. Sorry, and did that pull us off topic? Where were we?
So we were talking about the application form, so sort of who's involved, project idea, why it's needed.
Supplies needed, maybe?
Yeah, maybe supplies.
Mhm.
I think we
We're
should
not
probably
gonna
be
make a
upfront.
decision based upon their need for supplies, are we?
Oh.
We shouldn't ask them any
Well,
questions.
no, yeah, I
We're not
guess you're
gonna
right.
use-
Well,
Yeah.
so we can do one or two things. We can say, winning proposals will get a $500, have a $500 stipend or budget. So we want to know that that's maybe feasible, but maybe not.
So maybe it's not sort of supplies needed, it's
the
more.
team will kind of be assisting them, right? So your expertise can help guide it to be like,
Yeah.
okay, well, we can't buy all these plants, but we can get some greenhouse return.
And I mean, I think a lot of these pop-ups, they use borrowed and, you know,
Yeah.
secondhand items, so it's a lot of treasure hunting to put together the materials, so.
So what have we got?
I think we should ask about location,
Yeah.
potential location that you were envisioning this going on, and then.
Do we want anything about size of team or who's involved?
I think, yeah, who's involved, and my suggestion was that when we think about the criteria, that collaborative projects be given some weight in the selection.
Some extra attention.
If you've got several groups or you're pulling from several of our stakeholder groups, which we can lay out in the application materials, you know, we're trying to involve, there's a list of different stakeholders we're trying to involve, and then that could be one of the questions, is who's going to be involved in this, and you know, how many of the stakeholder groups are engaged on the team or something like that, could be some of the criteria.
Some people might find that to be a reason not to get engaged, though. If there's a group from youth services that says, oh, you know, we've got a lot of people who want to do this, but we have to go over and get somebody else engaged. I don't want to do that. I mean, just, I'm not saying not do it, but it might be a turn off. Speaking from the perspective of working with students who don't want to play with others.
One side of me thinks like, well, if they are kind of averse to the idea of engaging with the community, then maybe they shouldn't be doing public education.
Right.
But maybe one person, you know, or a team of one or two can come up with a great idea.
Yeah.
And they don't want to
Yeah.
compromise with other people.
Right.
They just want to enact their vision, which might be great.
Which might be
But maybe we can make it
cool.
known that
I like to see that.
collaboration's open, but not hold it to
Can
that.
it be a question? Are
Yeah.
you interested in collaborating
Yeah.
with other groups? Or would you be willing to collaborate?
Right.
I could see the beneficial, like feeding off of other people's energy. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and we might get two proposals that actually kind of would work really well together. And then we could,
And then, yeah, we.
and then we could suggest to them that they play nice.
Okay.
So this is one piece of paper that people write up.
Yeah. I think so, I think it needs to be.
And then we read it. We don't ever see them.
Is that a statement or a
It's a
question?
question. Question mark.
Do we want to invite them in? I mean, we can see how many we get.
Yeah, if we only get 3, there's no need to invite them in, but if we get 60, then we should probably see what we're doing.
At the same time, do we want to see 60 people? Are we, do we thinking, how many are we thinking we're gonna get?
Do you want to provide the opportunity for them, with this bias, to do some sort of like to upload a video or something where they can explain or show what they're trying to?
Like an alternate rather than something on paper, like they can do.
Or in addition to, like optional?
I think they can do whatever they want, and if they do that naturally, that just means they're really motivated, and that should get us excited about their.
Yeah, putting up a little YouTube film would be perfect.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if we're doing a forum, you have to have the mechanism for them to be able to do something.
Right.
Well, I guess you could link to it if you're that.
I think also a $500 stipend to pay for supplies is pretty enticing. So I think that's going to draw a couple people. You know, especially they'd be like, well, who's going to pay for it? You know, that question's kind of off the, not there anymore.
Yeah.
Well, and somebody from the town who's gonna make all the regulations go away. I think that's a real enticement.
Yeah.
It should be written just like that. Someone from
Yeah.
the town should make all the regulations go.
Regulators, you can do whatever you want.
Get out.
Whatever you want on Main Street.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we
Open
do
bar.
have to be, I think we have to be careful of what we're promising on that front. I mean, we're gonna ask people where they'd like to
Plastic
put these, but in
bottle.
reality, we may come up that we have only certain locations where we're going to be able to feasibly close off a portion of the street or take away the parking spaces or something like that. We're gonna have to work with the sites that we can.
Yeah.
But, it would be great if people have, some options that might be, not public space adjacent, but not necessarily on public space.
It's like there's this criteria for judging if we get so many, but then there's also this question of like, what information do we actually need to have on the application to be able to make some decision?
So, I mean, I think
it seems like we've so far not asked for very much besides like a description.
And do we want to ask how it meets the criteria of our 4 bullet
Yeah, I was
points?
gonna say that we should probably return to those for the criteria. That these are the, overall goals of the project.
It should still be as simple as possible,
Mhm.
because as soon as there's like any sort of, some sort of hurdle, we're gonna lose some people.
I agree.
So it should just be so simple.
And I think it shouldn't use terms like creative placemaking or
Best practices.
stormwater
Let's not say
management.
best practices.
Those are things that they would need more explanation as to what they would encompass.
And it makes it, I just did a survey with a greater New Hampshire community about creative communities. And there was so much like feedback and so much pushback saying, what do these words mean? Who are you? Is this your PhD dissertation? Use regular people language. I'm an art teacher. Yeah. So, there was a lot of like, we were trying to reach out to the greater community and got a lot of pushback on terms like, that are very familiar in our creative placemaking world, but are not.
Do they have a suggestion of what to call it? We get so stuck in
Play?
that,
Throw a party, here's $500.
Yeah.
How would you
Or like
change?
play
Make it look
space
cool.
or-
$500.
Yeah, make the street look cool.
Make people want to
There's
come
500,
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly.
$500.
Make people want to come here.
And
Make
hang out
people
here.
want to stay.
Also, the cops won't arrest you.
Yes, and the cops won't be there.
And you don't need permit.
Okay, are we helping at all?
Yes, you are.
Losing.
Right, it's
So-
true.
I think we have a sense of what you're looking for. I think we can ask if people want to do video or images, and we did not resolve the question as to whether you want to provide an opportunity for those who want to come in to see you when you're doing the project selection and stuff.
Well, when is the 14th of August? What day of the month is
It's a
that?
Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
Yeah, and I can't.
Oh, so
I
all
can't
those
be
dates
there.
are actually official. Those are like set in stone.
Well,
They're like.
they're not necessarily set in stone, but they need to be set in stone pretty soon.
So
So
I
if you
just
can't
heard
get
a
a-
couple of you say no Wednesday.
Yeah,
Just no, not that Wednesday.
so,
You're not that Wednesday,
Yeah.
you are not Wednesdays.
That Wednesday particularly.
so can we do that, can we do it on the 12th instead, which is a Monday?
Let me see. I've got,
Or do we have?
I've got
a
Monday
commission meeting
issues.
that month?
We have
We
in
should
August.
have one on the 5th.
Yeah.
and that's too soon.
Okay.
So that's the reason for pushing your meeting out, so.
So this is another reason, so like I use the example of coming up, like it sounds like Sue's willing to do this, but coming up with a schedule and how many commissioners you would like to have there. Like some
Yep.
events only need 2, some events need 5. So you say I would like 4 commissioners at this event and then we can then sign up for them.
Yeah, so the selection, we obviously, I mean, one thing is you could put together a selection committee from the planning commission. And then those of you who are available could meet. But if you want to do it as a whole group, we really need to have it that week, I would say, some point that week. So that's the week of the 12th, and I'm not available on the 12th. So that's the reason we didn't choose that one.
How about the 15th, the Thursday?
Yeah, I can't.
Probably not.
Oh,
So, yeah.
Because how many people can do that Wednesday? That Wednesday? You said
Wednesday.
you
Oh,
said-
Wednesday.
yeah.
Wednesday.
14th.
I could do
okay, so then we've got 4 of us.
Yeah.
That's
All
great.
right, good.
Let's.
Are you guys fine with that though?
Are you all right with that?
Yeah.
So you're a creative person, maybe you should be on the judging panel though.
I'd like everybody to be there, but.
Yeah.
Well, I think we can always send.
Well, how about the
feedback
13th?
though too.
We didn't try the 13th.
I'm away.
Raise your hand if you can do the
You're right.
13th.
I'm doing a fellowship until the
Oh.
night of the 13th, where I'm doing community conversation in Peterborough.
You can't do anything that whole week.
Wow.
Then the 14th is a big event in Keene, and then I could do the 15th.
Oh, God. No, you can't. On the
I
15th, you
can check
rest.
on the 15th and see if the 15th is a possibility. I have it booked for East Montpelier, but I'm not sure what their summer schedule is going to be.
I think I'm gonna be away on the 15th.
Okay.
Let's stick with the 14th.
If you guys are fine with that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
That's a Wednesday night?
that's a Wednesday night. Well, and maybe if we could have the proposals due on the 12th, that way if they're available online, people can chime in
Yeah.
electronically.
Yeah.
And then we can we don't even necessarily have to meet if it's a slam dunk, if there are only 3. then
There's only 3,
it's
yeah.
done.
What time is that?
Yeah, good
Can
question.
be at the times of your choosing.
Do you want to have it midnight on the 12th so that you can send things out on Monday,
Oh, that.
right?
Yeah, the deadline is midnight on the 12th, that's good, and then it's available online the 13th and the 14th. So then, why don't we do the evening of the 14th, like is 6 good?
Yeah, if I put it in now, I'll make
Let's
it happen.
do.
Yeah.
So,
Is that cool, Tom?
Which, the 14th?
the 14th.
Mm-hmm.
So 6 o'clock, do we have a space?
We can.
Okay.
We can always use our office.
Cool.
I don't know, I guess with the time constraint, I'm a little bit concerned about inviting people in. I think if we have a really tough job, if there's a bunch of them, we feel we need a presentation by somebody.
Yep.
That's just my gut.
Yeah, no, I am anxious about the notion of coordinating people, bringing people in. Because once you start to, just with the whole interview
Yeah, it's
process
hard
with
to-
you,
that ended up, looked easy, and then it was like,
It's never as easy.
it didn't really work out as easy as.
I mean, it's certainly gonna have to be an open meeting.
Yeah.
And people are gonna be able to attend, but
And we need to be fair to everybody, so I think we need to do, do due diligence and hear everybody out, but I don't think there's gonna be actually 60 applicants.
No.
So I think it should be pretty straightforward, right? Yeah.
And leading up to the application deadline, who's gonna be available for questions about?
questions can get routed to me, and then they can also, I can have other, some of the technical advisor people can also chime in and respond to questions.
And is there a rubric for how we're gonna judge?
Well, that's what I was saying, we should
Good
return
question.
back to the criteria. I think maybe the best thing to do is for Sue and I to have a shot at it, write something and then send it out to you guys
okay.
to have a look
Good.
at it. I think it's perhaps not a time for a group.
Like judgment
Think.
criteria.
Yeah,
But I
just
think
so you
if we go back to those 4 bullet points, which are sort of at the core of the project, and we expand on those so that we're using words that people can understand. And say that those are basically gonna be the criteria that you're gonna look at.
Just a reminder, if I send something out to you, don't reply all on something like that.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
naturally hit reply all
Don't do it.
all the time, and it's a habit I'm not in. So when can I not hit reply, or when do I not hit reply all?
Every time Sue.
Every time, it was,
Never
like,
hit
as
reply
Thomas
all.
pointed out, you can do reply all if we're trying to figure out when to meet. But you cannot, like, if I'm sending something out to you and say, can you send me feedback?
Yeah.
You shouldn't reply all. And if you do reply all, everybody else should not
Should not
jump
say anything.
on to
Yeah,
this.
exactly. Cool.
Yeah, it's like setting the time to meet, logistics,
Yeah.
materials,
Yeah, but
what
not
to put on the
discussion.
agenda, but not
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
decision-making or
Right.
weighing.
Which I don't think we've
opinion.
ever done. We've never done any of it. Yeah. It's all just coordination.
Yeah.
If you always BCC us,
Oh, would that be better?
then we can't reply all.
That's true.
I don't. My email
You're-
got messed up a long time ago, and I've naturally had to just start hitting reply all so that people actually get my emails. And so now it's a habit I can't stop doing.
Anyway, BCC, that's a good suggestion.
Draw your hand down. I hate reply all.
So, moving through space, capture our stormwater, our rain, play downtown, and make money.
Right. So,
Moving through space with your feet or a wheel.
so I think the next step take home thing for you guys is to take another pass through in the next few days over that list. If you come up with more ideas for people or groups you want added, direct the information to Sue and she'll get it to me. We'll keep building that information list, and then you'll be getting materials and information from me by the end of the week. That publicity stuff will need to get approved, or at least, or not really approved, but reviewed fairly quickly because we want to start doing that at the beginning of next week.
Can I ask you a question? Is there a way for people, like the engagement is very active. Is there an opportunity for folks who are not active to engage? Like some sort of online survey or through the website, some sort of like comment thing or?
So I was going to do an online survey for the downtown residents in particular, and potentially for the business folks as well, depending on our ability to sort of meet with them in person. That might be followed up as we get closer to the charrette with some survey information. And then during the Better Block and the charrette, there'll be opportunities to do sort of little brief feedback survey type responses as well.
Did you say survey for downtown businesses and survey for downtown?
For residents, definitely, and potentially for the businesses, if,
Yeah.
depending, we're working on meeting with the
Yeah.
DBA merchants group and stuff, and so if there needs to be follow-up, because one of the elements.
Might be more like one-on-one meetings, like
Yeah.
with the business groups and.
Or as we're working forward and we're working through the economic development strategy, I can envision sending out, a brief survey to them to get some sense of their priorities or.
I guess I'm also thinking of the people who don't come downtown. What in all of that, you're capturing the people that use downtown. But are there people that would come downtown, but they don't now because of something, and is there a way to capture that information, right? Like, is it, there's seniors who feel overwhelmed by downtown, or there are people outside that,
There's many reasons.
Well, I think,
I don't want to belabor it, but it just thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that is outside of the scope. I mean, we decided not to do kind of a big community survey. But I think that, how do we capture the people that don't come downtown? I don't know. How do we capture different groups? I can certainly, go have a conversation at the senior center with people and, I think we can't do everything, but we can definitely target users of the downtown. I know it doesn't get to your point of who doesn't come downtown, but.
Yeah, right, and if they don't come downtown, I was like, what, is there anything you can do that even would make them, but I'm just trying to think.
Well, through the Facebook group, in Front Porch Forum,
Yeah,
as long as we could validate
Right.
that those people aren't just like trolls from,
Yeah.
who fled out of Vermont and are living in,
Well, and
Carolinas or
also,
something.
all of the
could have them do-
organizations, the arts organizations have email lists, and those people probably, some constituents probably only come downtown for very few things, and so maybe those people like the Brattleboro Museum and EYT could say, we're gonna put this on your radar, so can you please come downtown for this event too? We're supporting this event, we'd like you to come. Theoretically, we could persuade them to do that. So I just want to do a time check, because it's 20 minutes before 8, and we have one more item on our agenda.
I
you
think
good?
I have what I need so that we can move forward. If anyone has anything to ask of me.
So the planning commissioners can expect some stuff by the end of the week.
That's not by the end of the week, and if you have further contact people ideas, feed
Send it
them
to Sue.
through. Send
Okay.
those to Sue and feed them through. And like I said, that's something that we can build over time as well. So that is, when an idea occurs to you, share it.
Cool. Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the last thing on our list is certified local government.
And what's the question?
So the question there is, does the planning commission want to, work on a proposal or some sort of, move this forward with the select board? Do we want to make a recommendation? I mean, it can be a staff thing, but it would be nice to have a recommendation from the planning commission if you felt that it was worthwhile. So was it last 2 Wednesdays ago? Several of you were there when Devin Coleman came down to do a presentation on the certified local government program, and then we did a historic district walk. So, yeah, is this a program that we want to propose that the select board adopt and become a part of the certified local government, which would, basically there's a couple of components. We would need to have a historic preservation commission, which is kind of, we have some pieces of it in place with the design review committee.
And they seemed enthusiastic about taking on that added role too.
They are enthusiastic. We would want a commission that had more than 3 people like that committee. So we'd have to recruit some others, if that's okay. We would be eligible for annual grants for historic preservation activities. It could be surveys, walking tours, historic district nominations, and whatnot. So the select board would have to pass an ordinance creating, a historic preservation. There'd be a historic preservation ordinance. There'd be a commission, a new town commission. But then it's kind of, it can be as active as they want to be. So, yes.
Yeah, Is there any reason not to?
Yeah, what's the negative?
I think we need to ask Devin, what are you hiding?
Yeah.
I mean, I think
So
it's another
awesome.
commission.
Yeah.
It's it's more volunteers.
Yeah, more volunteers.
You know, you can ask.
But he was
I
also
mean,
kind of like, it can be as what they want it to be. It can be pretty active, or it, can go dormant at times, and then,
There's no obligations on town staff?
No, it would be another commission to support.
As in money, like there's no money that's needed for that.
There are grants that the certified local government communities are eligible for every year. There is a match, I can't remember if it was 20 or 30% match, but that can also come
was
in
a
the form of
40%
40, but
No,
it's
60-40.
also, so if you're applying, but it can also come in staff time or volunteer time. It doesn't all have to be cash.
But you were asking Josh if the commission has?
Well, is there any financial obligation to it or anything?
No.
Like, yeah, there's no, it's just like every other committee.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just curious if the Housing Trust and the Historical Society were.
So the Housing Trust, so I did a direct mailing in those areas, and they weren't able to come. Well, the director wasn't able to come, but she, sounded great, but she wasn't able to come. The Historical Society, so one of the, I don't know who was there, if there was anybody else but Barbara George from the Historical Society, but she was there. And she's got lots of great ideas. I'm not sure what are those hers personally, because she's interested in preservation, or if they come from the Historical Society, but.
I wonder, I don't think it's going to, but is this going to lead to any change in our land use regs in the historic overlay? Or?
Well, I mean, that's one thing we'd probably have to work through. So one of the things that Devin spoke about, he wanted to be very clear that they don't really, they're not in favor of what we've done in Brattleboro, which is to take our historic districts and say that our historic district regulations apply to those districts that are on the National Register. Because they see the National Register as kind of a designation, and once you link regulations to it, it might feel a little bit like a stick. And where in the National Register, unless you're using federal funds on your building, there really is there's no stick there. It's just all, an honorable designation or whatever. So Devin and Barbara George have argued that they would actually like to see us decouple our regulations from the actual National Register historic districts. And so the idea is, if we did have a certified local government, if we were in part of that program and we had a historic commission, they could actually kind of prioritize what are the resources and neighborhoods in our community that we think are at risk, or maybe there's a better reason to preserve those, and therefore we would want to apply that section of the land use regulations to them. But just going out there and saying, you're on the National Register, and therefore if you're doing development in that area, then you need to follow these regulations, they're not in favor of that. So it could, if we had more information, we could choose to apply the historic resource overlay in a different manner.
So who was there? Who went to this? He said some people here. What did you guys think? Like,
It seems like a no-brainer. I mean, it's a sort of, you open the door to a little bit more money.
okay.
Yeah.
And is it like then kind of disconnecting from federal standards? Is that what it is? It's like detaching ourselves?
Two separate things.
Okay.
Yeah,
two
So
separate.
yeah,
We wouldn't
okay.
necessarily have to do what Devin wants us to do.
'Cause so Devin would vote yes on this right now. And
Well,
Barbara-
Devin is the guy who runs it for the
Yeah.
state.
Okay,
Devin-
but Barbara
Devin-
would also vote yes, right?
Yes.
Okay.
There's nothing that we did wrong with our regulations, because we did go through a public process to adopt them. There's this fear that, the fear is that if, say, a development came forward, they want to do an addition there in, the Clark Canal Historic District, they want to put an addition on. it goes before, it doesn't get a favorable recommendation because it violates, it's not in conformance with the Secretary of the Interior's recommendations about how you should do in addition to a historic building. The fear is that that homeowner is then going to start complaining to their representatives, and then the whole certified local government program will get defunded.
Collapses or whatever.
Yeah, when it really should be a local choice. So what they're trying to do,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, what the certified local government tries to do is kind of bring historic preservation down to the local level instead of like top down, like this is important. And
I really appreciate that. So yeah, I wish I made that event. So you guys
And
feel
the question of zoning has nothing to do with the certified
Yes.
local government. I mean, they're two totally.
They're two separate.
So we would deal with that if and when we wanted to.
Yes.
Voting for this doesn't mean we'd have to deal with that.
Right.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, so are we
We
ready
need a
to?
motion?
Yeah, who wants?
This is like the first time I've actually felt nervous about a vote being like, I wish I knew more about it. I'm trusting y'all because you actually participated and learned way more than me.
I would think that that would be an acceptable thing for you to do, but that's just my opinion.
What would be?
Trust us.
Yeah. I very much value
I mean, he went through the presentation, and
Yeah.
I was waiting for the "and we will need to,"
Right.
and it never came. It was basically like, it's exactly what Felicity said. Like, it opens the door for additional funds that you can only get if you're a certified local government. And so there's other municipalities that have voted for this, and then the funds can be used in a variety of different ways. So it just creates another opportunity.
So one of the things I like to say is I know there are neighborhoods in this community that would like to be on the National Register. And there's like homeowners within those neighborhoods like that have said, yes, we would really like to be on the National Register. But the town doesn't have the funds to hire the consultant that needs to do the survey work and write the nomination. So that's one way that we could contribute. We could get a grant and we could say, neighborhood A, we're gonna do a survey of it and prepare the nomination. Several of our neighborhoods in town are on the National Register because Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust got them on there. They paid for it. The reason they want it on there is there are federal historic tax credits that they're eligible for, and they're not eligible if it's not in a National Register district. So there are benefits to the community that way.
Right, so we can't, at the moment, get the grant funds to do some kind of study like that. If we are a certified local government, we can, basically.
Yeah. Or we could just do other fun preservation things, like
We
put
could,
plaques up on,
Put plaques up
buildings.
or make little guide
Walking
things,
tours, or
walking
right,
tours,
educational
do-
things,
Doesn't have to
or it
be-
could be anything.
It could, and it doesn't have to
Whatever you
be
can
just
do
in the
with the
downtown or some
3,000.
historic building. It could be a barn survey, if we felt like.
West Brattleboro gets,
Yeah.
there's an association.
So it's only
Yeah.
100% beneficial, especially to property owners, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should say as a resident and, homeowner in the Clark Canal District, Historic District, I've been looking at it through that lens as well myself, like,
Yeah.
what's the catch, or
Exactly,
is there
yeah.
a catch, or,
Yeah.
and it just seems like the up to several thousand that the town may get each year, that's like the best that it can work out, I think. If we do get a grant every year, it'd be for things like surveys and educational and inventories and placards and walking tours.
And it can be
Okay.
used for private property,
Mhm.
so. It made me think, like, he pointed out that one barn, and I was like, Frederick owns one of those barns that kind of look like that. That would be interesting, like, learn about it. So.
So does somebody want to make a motion?
I will make a motion that we vote on whether or not we want to recommend, I think, to the select board that we pursue the certified local government.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Alright.
Those opposed? Abstentions?
Does anyone-
Good.
did anyone-
Oh yeah,
Motion-
you're not on
Wait,
this.
so-
You're not on
I
this.
have public comment.
Yeah.
Very cozy public commenter with the commission.
Super. That's a good piece of work.
Should we make a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned, I think. I don't think we have to vote. Do we have to vote on that?
All right, you guys are fun.
By acclamation, we are adjourned.